Hi Krishna, how are you?
I'm good, Shabir. Thank you.
First thing first, Krishna, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing your eagerness and willingness to be part of this boot camp. Um, Folks, I would just like to inform you that Krishna has joined us from US, and despite of being so early in the morning, he is ready to share his experience and learning with the community. Three cheers for that, Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabir.
And I don't think so. I need to introduce Krishna as he's a very well-known figure in BizApp's world. He has also been awarded as the MVP for business applications, and it is a privilege for us to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Just providing some inputs on the topic of Krishna. So Krishna is going to enlighten us on customized parallel and sequential approvals by using Power Apps and Power Automate process. Without wasting any further time, Krishna, I will hand over the stage to you. The dais is yours.
Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much for having me. So as Shabir said, that today's topic is about customizing parallel and sequential approvals by using Power Apps and Power Automate. Before I go into the topic, my name is Krishna Rachakonda, and I'm Microsoft Business Applications MVP and Power Apps and Power Automate ex super user, and also 2021 extravaganza winner as well. And also here are my contacts. So going into the topic, so the reason I chose this topic is like every business case is different for organizations, right? So um, I ran into some specific use case where I couldn't use Power Automate's approval actions. So we know that whenever we talk about approvals, always we go to Power Automate and approval actions we refer to, and we will start using it. But in this specific use case, I was hitting some limitations with them, and started thinking to implement in a different way. So the use case here is the organization or the client has so many divisions, and in each division they got multiple levels of approvals. Let's say you like for example, let's take some company like Infosys. Okay. So that Infosys has so many branches throughout the world, and they may divide that into divisions or regions, and in each region they got so many offices. And also, for example, there are some invoices and all, then it needs to go through like multiple layers to get it approved and paid. So as part of that, and each stage also there will be multiple people as well. For example, in one stage there can be one person or 10 people, and again at that stage those people may need to approve that invoice in parallel or sequential, right? Some departments wants, okay, I know I'm enrolling like three people, and they all must approve or review that invoice before we all approve it. So there are different conditions at every different stage, right? So keeping all of that dynamic nature of approvals at every single stage throughout the approval process, I came up with this approach. I don't say that this is the first time somebody has ever done this, but probably I'm sure like a lot of other people might have implemented in similar way. But in this particular use case, I'll explain the approach which I took. So the use case in a diagrammatical way, if we see here, when a initiator submits an invoice, that will go to in a particular division. It will go to division approvers, and in that division approver, I can configure the approvers as sequential or parallel, As we know, sequential means one after the other. Parallel means any one of them approves it, then the process moves ahead. And in the corporate approvers, again, it's the same thing, either sequential or parallel. I can define at every stage whether I want sequential or parallel. Based on the need, I can change the configuration. Okay, so this dynamic nature of the approval process needs to be in place for this particular use case, because they were not sure about every division. So when I looked into the Power Automate, there are Power Automate approval actions. That's the default actions that we all go to implement it. As we know, there are few limitations that actually hit me. Is As we know, by default, when we talk about approvals, how long at every single stage this approval process needs to take place, like how long an approver will take to approve a task. So as we know, the Power Automate flow will run 28 days for approval. And also there is also workaround, like after 28 days, what happens? The flow may be suspended or cancelled automatically, and all our tasks will become orphaned. And also we have workarounds to cancel the task and re-trigger the flow again. There are workarounds for that. And also we have the flow history limitation as 28 days as well. And also after 28 days, if the approval flow fails and approval task continues to execute in the action center, so even if the approval process, that particular Power Automate is suspended or fails, still the approval tasks which are assigned to the approvers, they are still in the action center. So what happens, like when they approve it, it doesn't move anywhere. And also there are few other limitations keeping when we use it. There are few other challenges as well, which I did not capture everything here, but there are few other challenges as well. So keeping all of that in mind, I actually came up with an application like this, where the main interface is all in the Power Apps, through which we submit the invoice submissions, and then we actually the approval process. Part of will happen in the Power Apps, and part of it will happen in the Power Automate. So even though I mentioned about Power Automate approval actions earlier, I'm not using a Power Automate's approval actions. I'm still using Power Automate the flows, but to move the process ahead. But I'm not using approval actions. So my approval action, because I do not have approval actions in place, I am creating the tasks manually. In the sense, I'm creating the task through the flows, I'm creating the task through the Power Apps. So let's see, before we get let's see the application briefly, and then we will see what is the backend system of it and how the flows were created as well. Then we can go into the application, the details of the implementation. So this is I used Microsoft. I think it's been 6 months or maybe more than that. Microsoft released the Creator Kit components, so I use some of them. So and here when the this is the interface the user will see. So when they come here, they just simply attach a in an invoice. So when they attach it, they want to see the invoice and all the details of the invoice. It can be multi-page document, but they should be able to attach only one invoice document. And after that, they should be able to name and provide the division, and then all the metadata related to an invoice, and invoice number, Krishna, and invoice number, some 3003. Let me give like, let me make it round, and comments test. And once I submit it, it will take us to the submit screen, and after that it will come back and I can see my dashboard here. Again, this is all currently not sorted out, sorting in the sorting order. If you see here, this is the one which is submitted right now, the status, and we can see all the metadata that I have submitted. And let's see, it will shortly change the status, because once I submit an item, then behind the scene there is a flow that gets triggered, and then it will actually assign changes the status, and also it creates the tasks. So let me go and show you a different one which I have created just now, or if we wait for a few more seconds, it will finish it as well. Okay, we'll come back to that once it finishes. So let me go into the other one which is ready for us to review. So this is also just created before this session. So the one thing is here, behind the scenes, I defined as soon as I submit the invoice, it will go into the account, as I shown you in my presentation. The first stage is division approval. So in the division approval, I have defined as sequential approval. At a division level, I want sequential approval. And right now, the task is kind of assigned to Reza Dorani. I'm sure like most of you may know him. So Reza Dorani, and then when I approve it, I'm not Reza. So that's why when I see my all the task details here, I cannot approve it. Even though I'm an admin of the system, I cannot approve it. I need to reassign the task back to me. So I will assign it to myself, and I can update it. So when I reassign myself, and when I create the sub invoice and whatever activities I'm doing throughout the process, I have a history which is also gets updated as well. So if you see here, when I submitted the invoice, it actually it mentions all the invoice details and also approval tasks which were created and all of that. So even the task, now because the task is assigned to myself, so I can go there and I can start approving it. Approved, and I can provide comments, and working task is completed. As soon as it finishes the task, it will actually approve. And in that division approval stage, I have another person, which is Daniel Pastor, and again he's part of the same stage. And again, I will just change it to myself. Update, I will just approve it, and approved. I want to show this demo in action, and then we will go into the actual implementation details. Now the David Warner, and update, and sequential. So I have only 3 people in this division approval, and they all want to approve this invoice in sequential way. Once that is done, it will go to the next stage, which is corporate level, and then in that stage, it will actually there are 3 people, I think the same people, but that's configured to be parallel. So once I approve it, approved. Once I see it, like you can see the background process is in progress, and because it will trigger the background flow again. And we know that automated flows, there is a SLA, even though the flow is supposed to trigger immediately, but there is an SLA of 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So it may trigger sometime. So in the meantime, if the users come and see, oh, I don't see my task, or I don't see any task here, they will see, oh, some background process is in progress, they need to wait. So you can see now, like the flow actually ran behind the scene, and it actually created 3 tasks because it's all parallel. If it is sequential, it always creates only one task. And then so now, because I have 3 tasks here assigned to 3 different people, if I go and I would like to again reassign Reza's task back to me. And here, again, you see all of them are related to corporate approvers. And refresh the task, I can see myself there, and I can just go and approve. In the parallel, when I approve it, what happens is it actually approves this task, and it actually cancels the other two tasks because the other two are not supposed to review that task anymore, right? And also it places some messages as well. Let's go and click on approve. Approved. As soon as I approve it, it approves this current task, and you can see the other two tasks are cancelled. So the other two tasks are cancelled, but if I go into the other two tasks, I can see a message also. The task is cancelled by the system as corporate approver. Krishna Ratkanda approved the other corporate approval task. So I'm also leaving a message to the other approver says that, okay, so you don't need to worry about this task. So that's how I'm managing the task actually. And also right now, because I'm an admin, I'm able to do all of these changes. But if I'm not an admin, but if I'm just a approver, what happens is if I come, I will only see the buttons as view details. I will not see approve or reject button. So whenever I come here, whether it is approved or not, I can just click on that. I can see all the details of the task. If it is already approved, I can see the approval timestamp and approval status and all of that outcome, and all of that, and I can just come out of it. And my history is kind of, you can see it keeps on growing in the backend. Like this is very much required for auditing purpose because it's all financial related. So auditing purpose, I am logging all the timestamp and all the task reassignment, everything. Because even though I'm an admin, I should not be doing things from the back end. So I'm logging all of that for audit purpose. And the other important thing is now we are done with the corporate approval stage. Now it is going into the accounting approval. So in the accounting approval, again, it is a sequential one. So for example, let's go into that. This time what I will do is I will reject the task. When I reject the task, the way right now it is programmed is it will go back to the initiator, whoever is submitted. So let's click on that. And I cannot reject because the task is again assigned to Reza. So let me give Krishna. I will just click on approve again. I can go and reject it and reject. So this rejects the task right away, and you can see the task is completed here. And if I refresh the task here, the backend process is in progress. Once the background process is, there won't be any task created when we reject a rejected task, because always it when one approver rejects it, it always goes back to the initiator, means whoever it is submitted. Because while rejecting, we will ask, okay, need more information, or provide separate details or separate invoice details or something like that. So that's why some approver will reject. So when they click on, when they reject it, we can see now. If I go to, I need to go back and come here. Typically, if we see here, the user won't be there in the system whole time, right? They will go out and come back. So when I come back as initiator, okay, I'll receive an email saying that your invoice has been rejected. And when I come here, okay, I will see the fields again open for editing. Whatever details are provided, they are mentioned in the email as well. And if the comment, they can go into in the history and see why they were rejected and who rejected and all of that. And I can see, I can come here and make all the changes and resubmit my invoice. I can change my invoice file. I can change other details as well, and all of that. So that's pretty much the whole process. Okay. One other occasional means often the users always ask me, I mean, the business actually has also a requirement for, let's go here. So if I go here, we also have a feature for exporting it to PDF file. So if I go to PDF, it actually generates a PDF functionality as well. What does the PDF contains is complete details of the invoice. So it carries the invoice number, all the metadata of the invoice, all the tasks that were created during this process till that point, till I click that export to PDF, and also the whole history as well. So everything is included in the PDF document, and then we can send that as an email, or we can actually download and take a printout of it as well. So this is the overall process of the this invoice application. So any questions so far before I get into the backend system? Okay, so now let's for this application I have used SharePoint as the backend. Even though I use SharePoint, I do not recommend for this. I mean, if it is too complex applications like this, I recommend maybe Dataverse because of the lot of security or performance and a lot of other things. I recommend Dataverse. Again, for storing files and all, probably you can use SharePoint document libraries, even though we use Dataverse for the data. So here, the major SharePoint list I used is approvers, where I am tracking. This is the main heart of the approval process. So let me just filter by role. Or yeah, they are already ordered by the role and sorted by the role. You can see here. So there are three different approvers for a particular division, and they are having similar role. And in that role, I'm mentioning the approval order as 1, 2, 3. If I give the numbers in a sequence, that represents it's a sequential. If I give the approval order as zeros, that means all these three people in this particular role, they are all playing parallel approval role. One thing is I did not implement like we cannot put couple of users in approval and couple of more users as sequential. No, I have not implemented that, but that is still possible. So in particular in one stage. So right now I limited the dynamic nature of this approval process at every stage. So in a stage I can define, if I right now if I need to convert this these three people for a division approval, if I need to convert them to like from sequential to parallel, all I need to do is just come here and change these values from 1 to 3 to just zeros. That way, like I can, my application can dynamically recognize, oh, these three people are in parallel approval, so it immediately recognizes it. So it's that easy now for changing or flipping this approval process. So you can see at every stage I defined the approval order based on that. The next one is the divisions. The users are associated with the division, so the division list is here, and also active, inactive, and all of that. The next one is the admins. I am actually right now tracking all the admins of the application through a SharePoint list, but we can use different ways as well. So two other main SharePoint lists are invoices and invoice tasks. These two are the main SharePoint lists. The invoices captures all the invoice metadata. If we see the list settings here, you can see all the invoice metadata. And the one other thing is in the application, I'm showing the history column, right? That history column is nothing but a multi-line text field, which is a multi-line text field with a plain text. So I'm just appending whenever we are performing actions, I'm doing a patch from the Power App to this particular field to write all that data with like the timestamp, the user information, and all the history details, everything into a single field. And also you can have a separate history field and write all the details. You can do all of that as well. And the invoice number and all the metadata that we have here. And also one other important field which I'm using is here is a start process. So whenever I submit the invoice from the Power Apps application, what happens is I'm using a SharePoint list column here behind the scenes, the start process. So the start process is my system, custom field where I'm telling the flow when to start, when to stop. Means from the patch function, when I'm writing something into that SharePoint list, I set this particular columns value as start whenever I want the flow to trigger and perform some actions. Otherwise, I will set the start process to stop. So you will see that in the flow in a few seconds. Okay, that's another key field that I'm using. And also there are two more fields here, like a process, process status, which always holds the current status of the application, like pending division approval, corporate approval, and all of that. And also it is defaulted to submitted. Whenever we submit the application, by default it is submitted. And also there is a previous status that helps me to understand what is the previous status of the particular invoice. In case if I need to go back to a previous status, I can use this field. Okay, so the next SharePoint list is invoice task. This is based on, it is a normal SharePoint task list. And also on top of it, I included some custom fields on top of it, like the invoice ID. You can see invoice in all the invoice related invoice ID, division, and all other custom columns I included in the task list. So this is the backend, but as we know, we can use different data sources for this application, either Database or SQL. Even we can use it. So coming to the Power Apps here, let us see how this application was created. Uh, Keeping the time in mind, probably I think I have maybe around 20 more minutes, maybe, or 15 minutes. I'm sure like I may not go through every single detail, but I'll try to give you at a high level. But then if you have any more questions or anything, you can reach out to me in my contact. Unfortunately, I cannot share the code because I'm still this code is little proprietary to with my client. So but I made little generic, but still they want me not to share at this point because I need to get a release note from them. So this is not the exact application they are using, but still they want me to wait. So I got only few screens here. If we see the landing screen, that and when I click on submit screen, that will take me to the invoice form screen. And in the invoice form screen, that we all know, this is a PDF control, PDF preview, the control. And the attachments one, we maximum attachments was set to one. That's why we can only attach only one. And also I limited to attach only the PDF files as well. Somewhere the logic is there in this field or in the submit field also. Okay, only allowing the users to attach PDF files. And also the form is a tabbed form, so you will see different tabs when we browse the application. Let me just go and open an existing one, so I can go there and I can see there are multiple tabs that get created as soon as I submit it. So the tabs are there which will show the details. Like you can see, this is all another a gallery that actually brings the data from the invoice tasks and which are specific to this particular invoice. And the history is directly coming from that multi-line text field that we have. You can see that's a pointing to this multi-line text field as well, the invoice history multi column in the invoices. So let's quickly review let me go back and quickly review the approval process. So for that, let me just go into the division, and there may be a task here. Let's click on it. And here Whenever I submit a new invoice, what happens is, as I said earlier, let's go there. I'm sorry, I have to. That's what my intention was, to show you the submit process. Okay, whenever I submit the process, I have all the validations in place, because even though the form control can do a lot of validations, but I want to have my own validations and all. There are multiple business rules are there, so I'm showing an error message below the form, and after that all validations are successful, then I'm submitting the form. And once I submit the form, then there is on success of the submit form, I'm actually doing some logic here. So if the invoice, I'm actually generating the invoice ID dynamically from the timestamp and last submitted item ID, and also writing the, this is how I'm constructing the invoice history. Like you can see the username and the timestamp and all some details, and you can use char 10 for the new line, and the name and all the details of the invoice I'm placing. And then this is the flag SharePoint column I shown you, the process status which is submitted. And also once I update everything, then what I'm doing is I'm patching the invoices for the last submitted item, and I want to trigger the my flow now, so that it can actually move the process next. So start, when I say start, what happens is the flow will be triggered, like in the next, based on the SLA, it will start triggering the flow. So the flows are, I got only three flows here. This is the main flow, create approval task for invoice. And I have a child flow which actually gets called from the main flow, because there are different instances I may need to create approval tasks. So I'm just to avoid writing the same logic multiple times, I'm just calling the child flow. And I also have a PDF workflow, like to export the data into a PDF file. So let's see this invoice, I mean the create approval process. So in this yeah so here what I'm doing is, here as I said earlier, this is connected to my SharePoint list invoices, but there is a trigger condition here, which actually communicates to this flow, like whenever that start process flag or the column value is set to start, then only trigger this flow, otherwise it will ignore the any updates I make to that invoice item. So that's how I'm managing to, generally whenever we use this trigger, whether whatever changes we make, this flow gets triggered, right? To avoid that, I'm using that flag and setting that value through the Power Apps and Power Automate, when to trigger and when not to trigger. Or yeah, so in the create approval task, if I go down, you can see at different stages of the approval process, I have this switch command. So as soon as I submit my approval, what happened? I mean, submit an invoice. What I'm doing is, I'm trying to get all the approvers. So the main logic is like, okay, now I defined my approvers here as parallel versus sequential, all of that, right? But I need to convert this logic into reality in the flow. In the flow, what I'm doing is, I'm trying to get all the approvers from that approvers list for that particular division. And this is the first stage, which is the division approver. So it will go into this SharePoint list, and it will grab all these three approvers. And now what's the next step is, it will actually filter the returned values with the approval order is equivalent to 0, uh, to find out how many parallel approvers are there. So if I go to this approval for this division approver, I'm filtering with all these values with 0. So there are no zeros here for the division approval, right? Let's remember that. So now this action, this filtered items will return 0 items. So now I have a condition down there which actually tells us, okay, now I'm comparing the total number of items this SharePoint list returned versus the number of items this filtered action returns. If we compare that, then if both are matching, if both the numbers are equal, that means it's all of them are parallel approvals. If it is not matching, that means they are sequential approvals clearly, because I hard coded this zero. So if I get zeros, that means all of them are parallel. Otherwise, I'll get only the sequential. So that's what exactly I'm doing. I'm comparing the length of the main list, all the approvers, versus the filtered ones, and also the approval order also for each of the approver. And if it is zero, and if the length is also equivalent to each other, each of these values, that means all those approvers are um, parallel. So what I'm doing is I'm just calling my child flow to create a task. So this is the child flow, which actually I'm passing all the metadata. And also I'm just for not to recalculate whether it is a sequential or parallel while I'm approving the task. I am also mentioning the approval type as parallel so that it's easy for me to take it, use this value rather than recalculating whether this particular task is a parallel part of a parallel process or a sequential one. So that's how I create a task, and this process is repeated for every single approver. And if it is parallel, it will create individual tasks for all of them. And if it is not parallel, then it will come here and it will only create one task, because I set to the approval order to one, means it will create the task only for the first approver in that approval process. And then it will set the approval type as sequential. So that's how I'm managing to create a parallel versus sequential. And after that, I'm setting the flag start process to stop, so that I don't want, because I'm making the updates to the invoice item. So this is how I managed the process. Once I create the task, as soon as I submit it, this flow runs and it creates the task based on parallel versus sequential. Once that is done, what happens is we see those tasks right here in the task details, in the tasks tab. Let's go there and see. I believe we can see the task here, and I can go here, go to this particular task, and I can come here again. Some UI related hide, show, control, all of that was done as well. When to see those buttons and who should see, all of that logic is also there. But because I'm the visibility and disableness is also based on the current user logged in versus assigned to this particular task. And then reassignment is, it is very simple. If you see here, just click on reassign. I all I did was, like, in the task is again a SharePoint list, right? Task is also in a SharePoint list. So all I did was I just placed a invoice task form, but in this particular case, I want the user to update only the assigned to user. So the form has so many SharePoint list fields, but I do not want the other fields to be touched. So I just included only one field to be updated, and then click update. That will actually update the form. So that's how we are reassigning the task. And once we close it, approve it, the main logic is in the approve. Okay, let's see that. It is little heavy, very heavy logic here, I would say. But if you understand it, it's very easy. So once a task is approved, what happens is when I click on that approve button, it comes here and it's actually, I'm setting some variables to so that I can use them in the next instructions. So here in the patch, I'm getting the, I'm actually updating the invoice history as well as the start process. I do not want any, I do not want to trigger the flow. I'm actually doing that. And also, first thing first, I need to approve that current task. So I'm actually patching that current task to as approved, and the task will be completed as well. And all the task approval details and the task approval date and all of that. And once a task is approved, I need to check uh, when I'm approving a parallel task, what happened? There may be one, there may be few other tasks in the waiting for other users to approve. So I may need to cancel in that particular role. I need to cancel the other approvers as well, right? So for that, if I'm in the division approval, based on my current role in the division approval, if it is a parallel process, in that I'm actually checking how many tasks are waiting, which are in progress in the division approval for this particular invoice ID. If there are any, I'm actually canceling all of them by updating with the patch command. I'm updating the task status is cancelled and also providing some comments as well. So once I cancel it, and once I this is especially for parallel, if you see here. And if I go down further, you can see, and also after I approve it, I need to take the process forward, right? So that's why, like you can see, it is moving from division approval to corporate approval. I'm manually setting it through this code, Power Apps code, and starting the process flow again. That will do the next, it will trigger the flow and it will do the job. And in the sequential, again, if it is a sequential at a division level, what happens is I'm actually checking, I'm actually getting all the approvers for that particular division and for that particular role, and also what's the approval order of the current approver plus one, so that it will get the next approver from the SharePoint list. So what happens is, if that approver is blank, right? If I'm at a third approver, there are no other approvers, then it should not create any more tasks in that particular stage. So I'm just checking if it is not blank, then only it will create a task. And also it will stop the process, writing history and all of that. And after that, again, division approval task. This is like creating the task details. I know it's.
Krishna, just a quick time check.
I'm sorry.
Just a quick time check.
How much more time I have?
Maybe 2 minutes more.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Rakesh. So the next one is corporate, which is also similar level, and parallel versus sequential and all of that. So basically, the approval process is working in combination of my Power Apps code with the Power Automate code. I'm not actually using any approval actions through in the flows. I'm actually only using some ways to move this process back and forth as I want, by maintaining all those flags and variables. This actually enables me right now, if I want, I can go here. Okay, tomorrow, okay, I want to add 10 more approvers at this particular stage. I can do it. And I can make them all sequential or parallel. I got the dynamic nature of the approvers. And also, if the at any point of time, I can flip this particular approval order. If I want to change the order of the approvals, I can do it. So a lot of dynamic nature is there. And also right now, I in my process, it is hard coded that division to corporate, corporate to account, but we can also make it dynamic, which role is should go first. We can also make that as a configurable value. So I hope this is helpful. And my idea is not to show all everything like in detail, but there are other ways to do things based on the use case. Take the approach necessary, but this is definitely a complex approach for sure, and not necessary that you should take this approach. If your use case is working with approval actions, please do use them. If not, then try to think about this approach. Thank you, Rakesh. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Krishna. Any questions, guys, so far? Let me just quickly check the chat with you.
And for users, one more thing. Tomorrow, I recorded a session with Dhruvin Shah as well on the same application, which is more little deep dive into it. So you may see his YouTube video on that as well.
Okay, so why didn't you share the link of that video, or rather the YouTube channel, YouTube?
Okay.
maybe in the chat window so that attendees can go and subscribe to Dhruvin Shah's YouTube channel, and then as soon as your videos get uploaded, they will get a notification.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much, Krishna, once again.